All right, let's move on to the next one. So I'm running out of time. I'm going to give you a sneak peek at number 4 and 5, and we can dive into them later. What really matters here is believing in these strategies and deciding to start using them. Just turning things into memory objects, even the small act of turning something into a memory object is a good start. That is a good hook. But I'm going to show you these. So let's say we were trying to memorize, we just did these dynasties. Great, we know the dynasties in order. But what if we need to know the population of England during that dynasty, or the date that they started and end, or we want to have historical facts or characteristics like what led to the beginning of the Anjou dynasty and what led to the end of the Wessex dynasty? Well, what we need to do there is pack the attribute. And we pack it the same way we learn anything, is through some linking or storytelling. So if we have an object like wet sticks, then we want to pack it with additional objects. And so we have the wet sticks. And what I like to do is I have the wet sticks, and I think about the wet sticks in a box. And then as I open that box of wet sticks, I take other things out of that box. And I can link them and through storytelling. But that means we create an object for each of the things that we're trying to pack that object with, each attribute that we're trying to pack the object with. Each object that we're trying to pack that object, each attribute that we're trying to pack that object with. So one of the things that people ask me about a lot are numbers. And numbers are very, very important. One of the things that's hard for people is to remember numbers. And people tend to remember phone numbers, or they used to remember phone numbers because they dial them all the time. We don't do that as much anymore. But when you're trying to remember dates, or you're trying to remember characteristics like what's the gross domestic product of France, or you're trying to remember populations, or you're trying to remember anything like that, the challenge is numbers are very, very hard because they do not have any, it's hard to visualize a number. And you can only go so far with some of the strategies, right? There are some techniques called number pegs, which I teach in my class, where you can take a number like 1 and turn it into something that sounds like 1, right? Bun. You can envision a hot dog bun. That's a great way to do a list, right? You can just do number 1 is hot dog bun, 2 is shoe, 3 is tree, 4 is door, and you can do, numbers 1 through 10. So if you just need to remember a list of 1 through 10, you can do either the storytelling, or you can do the mind palace, or you can do the number pegs. But as we get into more numbers, let's say you're trying to remember 1868 as an important date. What do you do with that? Well, that's where something called basic number objects come in. And the goal is to turn every number, actually just 2-digit numbers, because we can create basically any string of numbers by stringing together 2-digit numbers. So dates, 1868 is 18 and 68. So if we have a memory object for 18 and we have a memory object for 68, then we can basically create any number, especially a date like 1868. So how do we do it? Well, first, we do the same principle. Do we already have an object for the number? I am a football fan, okay? And being a football fan helps a lot because I have numbers for about 40. I have pictures in my head for about 40 different numbers already, right? If you say number 32 to me, that's Franco Harris, a running back for the Steelers. It's very easy. 95 is a linebacker for the Steelers. Very easy. Number 12 is Tom Brady for the Patriots because I don't like him. But all these things are very easy. But if you don't have that, then you have to come up with another technique. And the real thing that we're going to focus on here is the strategies to turn numbers into memory objects. This is a lengthy process. This is probably the hardest process. This is the equivalent. If you look at this grid in front of you, this is the equivalent of learning your multiplication tables. What we do is we come up with a number object for each of the numbers that you're looking at here. Okay, that's about 110 numbers because we want to also have, for 1902, we want to have 19 and 02, right? And that's different than 2. That's a different number. So we create objects, memory objects for each of these numbers. That is effort, okay? In our memory program, we spend a couple of weeks going through and you memorize your memory object. You create and then you memorize your memory objects for each of these basic numbers. But what that does is it enables you to turn any number, dates, populations, statistics, math formulas of any sort, you can turn them into memory objects, and then through linking and storytelling, you can memorize hundreds of numbers at once. In fact, one of the things that we do as part of the memory challenge is we memorize the number pi to 100 digits, right? And people memorize it to thousands of digits by using the basic number objects and then creating stories around them. So what we do is, but let's just test this out. Is there any number on this list that means something to you? For instance, maybe it's your birth year. If your birth year is on this list, which presumably it is, the last two digits of your birth year, then you could be the memory object for that number. And anytime you need to memorize that number, you just use yourself as the image. Maybe you know your parents' birth year. You could use that. Maybe I'm also a history buff, and that makes it easy too, because the number 1963 or 63 is memorable to me. 08 is memorable to me. 41 is memorable to me. So I have memory objects for each of these numbers. If you don't already, then there's a strategy that I teach which will enable you to create memory objects, and then we go through the process of memorizing them. Okay? And one of the cool things, and I'll just give you, I think I'm pretty much out of time, but one of the cool things that we do is there's a way for you to put a number like 1968 together, and it's called the person action object system. And so you use the person that you have associated with 24, and for 24 you have a person and a verb. So let's just say for you, for your date, it would be your name, your image, and you crying as a baby. And then let's say that 36 is Michael Jackson, okay? And you envision Michael Jackson moonwalking. Well, if you're trying to use a number that has your birth year as the first two digits and then 36 as the second two digits, then you're going to envision you as a baby moonwalking. And that's going to give you your number and 36, okay? Now, this is a little complicated, but it is one of the things that can take any number and you can immediately turn it into, make it memorable object immediately, okay? So what now? Whether you're a parent or student, I want to help you become a memory master. That is one of my passions. And part of this is about teaching these strategies over again, right? So that you can practice them, coaching around these strategies. And the way we coach is in your school and in your classes and in your assignments. So as you develop things that you need to memorize, we take those and use those as the stuff that we're working on with these strategies. So this is not extra work. This is about using these strategies in your existing work. And then I celebrate them. What we do is we recognize every month our Rookie of the Year or Rookie of the Month, people who have accomplished their certain belts, right? I kind of take the karate approach, which is, have you achieved your Mind Palace belt? Have you achieved your linking and storytelling belt? Have you achieved your number pegs belt? So that you can really demonstrate that you know all of this stuff and that you have been using it and being successful. We also celebrate your academic achievements. You will, if what's stopping you from being successful in school is any degree of being able to store information, then your grades will go up. You will make honor roll. You will achieve academic awards. So we want to celebrate our students when they achieve those sort of measurable, visible indicators of memory mastery. So we have the Master Student Club, which you'll learn more about. Then we have the online course, which takes each of these strategies and, like this, with a video and exercises, goes through how to do them. And we have some labs where you can practice creating your memory objects and you can create your lists and all that stuff. It's really cool. A handbook with all of the strategies and lists to remember and places to put in your basic number objects. And then we have a 3-hour intensive where we bring the students together and we go over either refreshers on different strategies, or more often it's practicing the strategies and going through challenges, and then coaching. So if you are trying to remember things, or if you're working on a list and you need help, then all of my students work together to try to share objects and to share stories. And I find acronyms and other memory devices. There are lots of things that we haven't talked about here, like using songs, using acronyms, using other mnemonic devices, using popular culture for ways to remember stuff. So there's lots of different techniques when you've started to develop this attitude of learning and remembering. What I do is I do an interview with the student and the parent to find out what they're trying to accomplish. We customize the program for elementary school, middle school, and high school. And then once you have graduated from the actual course, then you get a completion certificate. But then we also have the leaderboard with the belts and then the monthly awards. If you are interested, I limit the number of slots to try to make sure that it's a manageable number. So if you're an elementary student, then there's a certain number of slots in middle school and high school, etc. Email me with your information and specifically why you think that this would be really, really valuable for your student. And then I can provide more details. And again, we can connect the students. If there are no slots available, then we can connect the students with the Master Student Club, certainly, as a way to just stay connected until there's a slot open up. But we try to bring in new students on a regular basis. So because as we move students through the program, they move on to bigger and better challenges. So we try to manage the number of students that are getting started at any one time. So thanks very much for joining me. Feel free to give me any feedback, email, whatever. Hopefully this was valuable to you, and please let me know if it was.